In today's show, it's more Trailblazers draft talk with Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings. Welcome to Lockdown Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? Your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today's episode, a very special one. Someone who is laughing at me calling myself a past first point guard. Founder of No Ceilings, Tyler Rucker. Tyler, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
That intro was electric. Thank you, Mike, for having me on. I'm pumped to be here and appreciate the opportunity. It's time to talk some Portland Trailblazer basketball. Draft season. I love it.
What folks don't know behind the scene is that I had to get ready for that intro. That intro wasn't natural. I breathed fire into myself to be ready for that intro. Let's talk some draft stuff. I've heard you on a podcast earlier this week mention that this draft doesn't have top end talent, which I think everyone agrees with. But something you said that interests me, and I want to get into this, is that it might be considered a weak draft, but there's a lot of depth. What does it mean when people say weak draft to you? When they say, oh, the 2024 draft class, so weak. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think everyone's just kind of pointing out that, any year that there's no just consensus number one pick, I think everyone gets nervous. Everyone gets a little doubtful of like, okay, is this a bad year? Is this class going to underwhelm? And I don't think that's necessarily right with this class. I think there's a lot of intriguing value just because that the top players are a little unproven, or they might be higher upside swings with a little bit more raw talent. It's a good year for depth. It's a good year for Portland, like a team like that has a couple picks in the lottery. It really could be a year in which some fantastic value is going to present itself, and you can get two fantastic assets to add to your roster. And a team like Portland that's really starting to slowly put it together. They're just a couple pieces away, or a couple just steps in the right direction for some of their young players. Like, things could get exciting in a hurry. And I know Blazers fans might be like, what are you talking about? We're picking 7th. They're close. They're on the right path. They just need a couple things to fall into place. And I think this is the year a team like the Blazers, you can get really nice additions to kind of help that next step forward when it comes to your franchise's development and getting back to the playoffs, hopefully.
I will say for my listeners, I just want to throw this out here. No Ceilings has been consistently more positive about the Portland Trailblazers than I ever have on this show. Their draft previews, the guests I've had 3 or 4 of the No Ceilings guys on the show. When they talk about this team, they say nicer stuff than me. So they don't have a daily podcast about the Trailblazers, but what they do have is a lot more positivity. Some of that might be proximity. I mean, some of it might just be proximity. I'm a little too close and I can't see it. And I think maybe zooming out to 30,000 feet gives you a better perspective. And maybe I'm just a hater. I think those are the two things. It is draft week. You, dear listener, are listening to Thursday, June 20th show. I appreciate you listening. A week away. This is like peak BSing season. This is lying season at its max. How do you parse when you're hearing stuff and you're reading stuff? How do you parse stuff that is like, hey, this could be real intel. We're getting real nuggets of draft stuff because it's a week away and people making decisions to this is a lie. Like, and how do you, when you're kind of parsing through it, go make sense of the smokescreen?
Yeah, it's tough. I think fans get so excited every day when you see like the newest reports or rumors dropping on the internet. And it's like, in the draft community, you're pumping the brakes really fast. You're like, okay, let's take note of that, but let's also realize what's going on, the time of the year. This time, I think the week of the draft, that Monday is just famous for just smokescreen galore. So it's tough right now because especially a year like this year, there's so much uncertainty. Usually at the combine, even we have some sort of idea of what the top of the draft could look like. You talk to scouts and execs before, like they were like, no one knows what's going on. And so this is going to be a really fun year. It's going to make great television the night of the draft because it could just be curveballs everywhere. But I think, when it comes to intel this time of the year, you got to kind of check with your sources. Who do you trust? Who have you been trusting over the year? Who's been good? And there's a lot of misdirection. There's a lot of agents pulling some strings. So, paying attention to the workouts. And then all of a sudden, if you do hear something, if you can bounce that off another source and you kind of connect those pieces, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, maybe there is something to this. But definitely a popular time of the year right now for some smoke and some names that start buzzing. You're like, whoa, okay, is that a legit one? Or is that just the latest kind of smoke to throw out there and try to get someone to maybe fall or somebody else to fall down? So a lot of misdirection this time of the year. You got to be careful and not to get too, caught up with some of the rumors, but it's take everything with a grain of salt season for sure right now.
It is. I mean, I remember reporting stuff back in the day for the Trailblazers a long time ago. 2 agents told me X and X. I called the Blazers front office and said, like, hey, this is what I heard. And they said, they are wrong. And guess what? The agents were wrong. It was like I had heard from 2 separate people that had no idea that I was talking to both of them. They had told me these 2 things. I called, the people in charge of the Blazers at the time, said, hey, this is what I'm hearing. I'm going to write this. Is this true? Said, no, it's not true. Uh-oh. And it turned out it was right. It was like, I heard people as confident who I trusted. It's a weird time of year. And this was, maybe 8 days before the draft. And I always think about that interaction where it was like, who do I trust this time of year? And then also like from the outside, when I haven't been as close to it over the last 4 or 5 years, it's like, you see the betting markets change aggressively when it's like, oh, I guess Paolo Banchero is going to go number 1, or like whatever the hell happened last year with Shams Charania and Brandon Miller. It's the time of year when stuff is people are intentionally vague. I want to get into prospects here in a second, but you mentioned some like lack of clarity at the top. It does seem that there is a swell around Zachary Risacher being the number 1 pick. That seems to be the direction things are heading. How much do you buy that now? Because I think there are repercussions down the board that could even find the Blazers feeling that at 7.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many names still in the conversation. That's the crazy part is you get to each team and you're kind of breaking it down. You're trying to get some intel about each team, and a lot of names keep popping up at each spot. And you're like, well, you have to pick one. You can't pick 5 of them. So what is it coming down to? Risacher is the name that, you keep getting in buzz about being at number 1. I know the Hawks are trying to bring him in for a workout. I think he's supposed to work out for the top 3 teams, or a couple of teams with the Spurs, I think at 4. So it's creating some buzz. It's creating some momentum. I want to say a month ago or right after the lottery, everyone was like, hey, it's going to be Sarr at 1. Now it's like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden Donovan Clingan's in the picture. And I know he's been kind of mentioned as, hey, he could fall to the Blazers. That's how wide open this year is. Risacher's got a lot of talent. He's one of those players that I think a lot of teams are going to think is that higher floor, maybe not the biggest upside, but tall, 6'9", with the ability to shoot it from outside and play good defense. Usually those players can figure out a way to stick in the league for a long time. So I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think Atlanta's still trying to figure out what they're going to do, but Risacher is getting some buzz right now. And I know he's going to head there to work out. So it's going to be really interesting. And you pair in that Atlanta's tried to get Alex Sarr and they can't get him in right now to work out. So there's some stuff going on. And reportedly Clingan had a great workout with him. So it's going to get nuts. It's going to be really wild. And I think it's just picking up momentum to be even more chaotic on draft night.
Yeah, and Landry Fields had told reporters earlier this week in like a public press conference, oh, we're going to keep the pick. Right now, we're going to keep the pick. He said that on Monday. Yeah, okay, we're going to keep the pick. And then there was some reporting from ESPN today that maybe they're exploring trading the pick and like having discussions with San Antonio. So it's like, and who, why are those such clearly conflicting reports? If Atlanta keeps the pick, the first tradable pick is like at 3, and then all of a sudden Houston has all this leverage. If Atlanta's trading the pick, probably kill some of the leverage for Houston. Like there's so many dominoes. I think it's really fascinating. And the fact that we're a week out and it's unclear, there's 3 guys who could go number 1 is really fascinating. And if one of those dudes doesn't go number 1, he might slip to freaking 7th and end up in Portland. Let's talk about some targets for the Blazers. We've kind of talked theoretical. Let's hammer down on some folks you like and some names that we've seen in that range. That's what we'll do in the second segment. Join us there, won't you? But first, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. It's the place for last minute tickets. This weekend in town in Portland, you can go see a couple soccer matches. Go check out some footy. The Timbers are in town and the Thorns are in town as well. And maybe you didn't know about that until you just heard me say it out loud, and you're not someone who was maybe going to be on top of it. Well, guess what? If you're not really on top of it, there's no better app for you than Gametime, the place that rewards last minute ticket buyers with up to 60% off last minute tickets, including tickets that get cheaper the closer you get to kickoff. So say you're kind of dragging your feet. You don't know. Maybe Saturday, maybe I'll go check out the Timbers. Sunday, maybe I'll go check out the Thorns. Well, make sure you have that Gametime app downloaded. Then you'll get tickets that could even be cheaper after the match starts. That's how good Gametime is. They reward you for procrastinating. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, it's really simple. Create an account, use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $20 off. That's Gametime. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, still chatting here with Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings. Okay, so who do you like at 7? I'm just gonna hit it with a fine pin to begin with, and then we'll go a little broader. Who do you like you're on the clock at 7. Who do you like for the Trailblazers?
I'm just going to say I would love if Klingon fell to them. Now, I know they have DeAndre Ayton. I know they got some big court depth. I know Robert Williams was banged up last year, so you're hoping that he's healthy. But I still think Klingon would be a fantastic pick there. Now, let's just say he's not there and they got to go another route. I like Dalton Connect a lot. And I know some folks might be like, hey, he's older. But the point is Portland has a nice roster with this backcourt. Like, I think Scoot's getting ready for a nice step in year 2. I thought he finished the season and looked fantastic. Started to look like the prospect that I evaluated. He just really was like, okay, he's starting to find his groove. Shaedon Sharpe, if you get another healthy year. Now, if you get a dangerous shooter alongside those two, right, you're really cooking with something. If everything can, if Shaedon takes that next step, Scoot takes that next step, then you add a nasty 3-point shooter. And I think a lot of people think Dalton's this, typical white guy that can just shoot. No, he's tough. He gets to the hoop. Yes, very good athlete. He's got some bounce and he's nasty and tough. And he's been one of these guys that's been working his butt off his whole life to get here. Kind of one of those one of the best stories in college basketball this year. So I like Dalton Connect a lot for them. I think that's just the pick. If Portland hits on him at 7 and then you get that 14th pick, maybe you could swing a little bit more upside at 14. But I think Connect would just be a really good value for potentially his role where he could play for a long time in this league. He's nasty. I mean, there's a reason why he was, one of the top scorers in college basketball and in one of the toughest conferences. He's the goods. If you're looking for a microwave wing with size and nastiness, Dalton Connect can deliver.
Yeah, I've kind of warmed up to him. I would say that I was in the he's too old camp. I try not to treat 23-year-olds like they're ancient. Like, it's just like, it's like, come on. But it's this time of year, it's hard not to, right? You see someone who's 19, you see someone who's 23, you say, oh, 23, he's a finished product. He's never going to get any better. Or it's not, actually, I don't think never get better. I think that's not true. It's this guy can only sharpen from here. Like, this is basically someone who has developed the edges, the rough edges of who they're going to be, and they can only sharpen the edges from there. Whereas like a 19-year-old, you're like, they could be anything, like, oh, the shooting and the playmaking and the ball handling, it's all going to pop, and they're going to be, by the time they're 22, you can only imagine, right? But I've warmed up to Connect a little bit because, one, I think, and I'd like to ask you on this take, it's like a lot of what it seems like in this draft is there's a lot of you're aiming for role players, right? There's not going to be guys who are high level players, and Connect is probably closer to an NBA role player. If you're banking on a guy and saying, I hope this player turns into a serviceable starter, and Dalton Connect is much closer to a serviceable starter, does it make sense to just say, hey, like, are there upside guys, I guess is what I'm asking, that would be maybe not as sure thing as Connect, but you think, hey, that's worth it?
Yeah, I think one of the popular names is Tijane Saloon, forward for playing overseas with Chalet. Really, really talented, crazy upside. And his range is all over the place when you talk of. There's some teams that just are head over heels, absolutely love him. There's also some teams, I think, later in the lottery that are hoping that he falls. I think Portland, if they love him, 7, that's the swing you take. You might take the swing there, and then at 14, get someone a little safer, maybe a Tristan da Silva if he's on the board. But, Saloon is really fun, like 6'10" I want to say he's like 6'9", but good size, good body,
He's
really
huge.
young. He's huge. And he plays with his hair on fire. He's just flying all over the place. Still really raw. He needs to work on some stuff, but he showed this year he can step out, stretch the floor from deep. If the rest of the game comes around, like if you can make the role simple for him early on, he's going to work his butt off. And the work ethic's been fantastic from what I've heard. So that's a really high potential upside swing that, you know, a team like Portland, especially in this draft, that might be worth it to kind of swing for the fences a little bit. But I know what you're saying. There's a lot of rotation assets in this class. There's a lot of guys that you're like, hey, I don't know if he's going to be an all-star. And it's like, well, yeah, but he might be the 6th or 7th guy for the Blazers for a long time, or he might be that starter alongside the stars you have in the starting lineup. So it's a good draft. Like that's why a lot of evaluators are like, no, it's a fun draft. You guys got to get excited just because the top might be scary to some. For teams like Portland, there's going to be good value starting where they're at.
Well, I want to ask you about Cody Williams then, because I feel like he's a quintessential Blazers pick, right? He wasn't hyper productive in college, whether that was slowly developing or injuries or a combination of both. He shot really well, but he took 41 threes in 28 games or whatever it is. He took like one a game. He made them, but he didn't shoot much. So it's like the shooting's kind of theoretical. He was also the third option on the third best team in the Pac-12. He seems to be, it's like, I guess, what do you view Cody Williams' ceiling as?
I think it's high. I think it really is. You know, he's been one of the more fascinating prospects to evaluate this year, because before even coming in this year, I saw him in Portland at Nike Hoop Summit, and I was, there's been buzz about him going back to high school. He played at Gilbert, which is right down from me in Arizona. Like there's a lot of fun tools. Obviously, his brother's a rising superstar in the NBA, and Jalen Williams. But I think I thought Cody was going to be a guy that broke out in his sophomore year. So for me, just as my evaluation, he overachieved this year, because I was not expecting him to be this ready at a Pac-12 level alongside what they have going on. And the first half of the year, he looked fantastic. He was smooth. He was all over the place. He's slithery. He shot it well, like you said, not a high volume, but still shot it well, much better than people were expecting. Then he got banged up a little bit and, tried to play through some injuries. I think he had a nasal fracture. He had a bum ankle to try to play through in the tournament, and you could see him running up the court and you're like, this does not look right. So I give him credit for trying to play through it, trying to be there for his team, but it was just kind of like it ended the year poorly, but the first half of the year was fantastic when he was healthy. He was doing a lot of good stuff on the court. So Cody's his body's got to fill out, but the intel's been fantastic about him. I think he's got the right mindset, and he's further along than his brother was in his development. Now, Jalen Williams took 3 years at Santa Clara before he went to the NBA. Cody's going one and done, and he's going to be really intriguing, because that's one of the names that's just very wild. You hear top 5 buzz, you hear, hey, top 10. So I think if he's on the board for Portland at 7, that's a really good swing if they're in, because I think the tools, the upside could be a really special talent down the road. It might not happen in the first year because he needs to mature a little bit, fill out his body, but he's got all the ability to be a special player in this class.
Yeah, I think he's pretty interesting. He fits the mold for them. Like, they have mostly been high upside team. Chris Murray aside, they did draft a guy who played 3 years in college and was 23, but for the most part, it's kind of like the Ryan Rupairs and the Shaden Sharps. That's who's been just sort of the Joe Crone mold, right? It's like toolsy. You could see the vision, but maybe they're just like not quite there yet. Sharp has shown some flashes, certainly more than Rupair, but also he was taken 7th and not 43rd or whatever. So a little bit different route. You mentioned Klingon. I've talked about him a bunch. I am pretty confident that he's going to be a good NBA defender. I'm a little dicey on what his offensive impact is. He can pass, but I'm not sure like his touch is there around the rim and like what else he does. And like, do you have to guard him outside of 8 feet? I know he's shooting well in workouts, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm old enough to remember Yi Jianlian. Like I remember E was killing it, man. E lit that chair up. Like nobody could stop him against the chair. The chair had no chance. Like workouts don't mean anything to me at this stage of the season. But what you kind of mentioned was like, they've got front court depth. They've got bigs. They have DeAndre Ayton, and he's, 26 and under contract for 2 more years. They've got Rob Williams, who's young, and obviously like it's a question mark. They just signed Duop Reef. I don't think he makes decisions based on Duop Reef, but like you have that player on the roster already. What do you like? Why would Klingon make sense?
It's a great question. It's one of those, I think you get to a point where if you're Portland and you're like, hey, he's third on our board. We were going to take the best player available on our board, and regardless of fit, and maybe you're thinking there is a higher upside than what's on the roster right now with him, and it might just need some time to come together. I get it. And I think teams like Klingon, because of the interviews have been outstanding from what I've heard. He's impressed in workouts. I think he's a smart kid that's tough, that plays hard, that has two-way potential to really be something special. The playmaking is very, very nice. Like it's something that just, it's blossoming. I'm right there with you. I'm not buying the outside shot. I think agents know what they're doing with the pre-draft process. They're like, go to workouts, shoot the 3-point shot. Everyone gets excited about that. But I think if he could get to a point where he can step out and hit 1 or 2 a game and make you respect him, that makes him even more dangerous. I like his feel. I've been a doubter going back to last year. And now the more I kept watching him, I was like, okay, I'm starting to see this. You're really impressing me. First half of the year, I was like, I don't know. And then he was slow. He was out of shape. He was playing and trying to get through some injuries, trying to get back into conditioning. The second half of the year, you watch the tape and you're like, this is a different person. Like he just looked fantastic. And I had even talked to an exec and he's like, Klingon second half of the year was great. And I was like, yeah. So, he really, it's well-deserved with him. And I think the shot blocking special, he's got pillows for hands, and there's some footwork around the basket that's a little bit like, whoa, it kind of sneaks up on you just because he's 7'2", 280. So I think it would get to a point where teams know what he is. Like, they're probably pretty comfortable with his floor. And they're probably also like, there's a world in which the upside's much bigger than we're thinking. So for Portland, it might just be to a point where we're like, we did not expect him to be on the board. We're just going to take him and figure it out. And I think that's also what Portland has done lately is they're collecting a lot of assets, and a couple of those take another step forward. And I'm not just talking about Scoot and Shaden. Like a couple of those find their groove. Things are going to get fun because now you're just getting all these young pieces. Like OKC did a fantastic job of that. It doesn't come together right away. You got to kind of chip away, and then all of a sudden everything can get a lot clearer. And I think that's what they would possibly do if Klingon's on the board.
Yeah, I'm totally pro Klingon. I set you up for that question. Like I was doubtful, but I'm like, draft him. Who cares? Like, I
get it. I completely get it. Like it's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but then you're like, okay, if you're a team like Portland, might make sense to just be like, we got him. Now let's just figure everything else down the road.
They're not going to be good next year. The following season will be DeAndre Ayton's contract year. Like, do you want to pay DeAndre Ayton $45 million? Right. I think, and maybe they've already made that decision. Maybe they have no idea. And that's a decision that they would love to have to make. Oh, wow. DeAndre Ayton is a $50 million player. Like he's been incredible. He was pretty awful to begin the season, and he played a lot better at the end of the year. And it's like, if that is the guy who can play 82 games, and who knows, like then at some point like you said, you just kind of want to amass some talent, and the Blazers are so light on talent that it's like, if Klingon really is third on their board, or like higher, if he's 2, right? Like if he's the second highest guy on their board. And I think there's been a lot of connections to the Blazers and Klingon. I think that is a very real. The people who know keep saying they like ESPN keeps writing like the Blazers would be ecstatic if Klingon was here. They keep using words like that. It's like,
who does Gavoni know in the front office?
It's like that's not subtle, right? Like the Blazers would be thrilled if they got Donovan Klingon. Like, okay, yeah. So I think there's some real stuff there, and I know he's not a clean fit, but I kind of get it. Okay, I want to ask you about some second round guys and maybe some later names on the board. The Blazers have 34 and 40, and some names that are deeper in the draft that you like for this team, or just in general. If you're scouting in the second round, that's what we'll do to close the show. Join us in that third segment, won't you? First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you're watching your favorite sports and your favorite players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and you get a shot to win up to 100 times your money. With PrizePicks, that means you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports all summer long. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds, and it can be as few as 2 players, but you can go up to 6, and you're just picking against the stat projections. You go more or less than the stat lines that PrizePicks puts out there, and then you're locked in. And even though the NBA is done, you still want to get in on a basketball action. Well, the WNBA is rolling along, whether you want to put some entries in for Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese, or when you want to go with the stars like Breanna Stewart, Stewie, and Asia Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your money just watching the WNBA. So play along with PrizePicks and make sure you download the app. And when you do, download use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA after you download the app, and you get a first deposit match up to $100. So download the app, use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA, get a deposit match up to $100. That's dollar for dollar up to $100 in your first deposit when you use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still chatting here. Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings. Tyler, what kind of pickup basketball player are you?
If Dennis Rodman. Just feed me on the boards, and I guess probably some Rondo. I can't shoot, but I'll pass. I'll throw dimes and I'll rebound. That's pretty much it.
Oh, maybe Josh Hart.
Josh Hart. That's perfect. Josh Hart, just one of those. I'll hit one shot and I won't shoot the rest of the game because everyone will think I can shoot. And I'm like, no, that's my strategy.
That sounds like a true Josh Hart. Pass first point guard, Josh Hart, not a great combo. You do need shooters. Just like the Blazers, you do need shooters. Okay, so the Blazers, we talked about some like lottery type of guys, some names that are there. They also have 34 and 40. Who are some names, particularly in like that early second round range that you like, or that are kind of Blazer fans should be familiar with heading into next week?
Yeah, it's a good year to have a couple second rounders too. Like that, there's a fun range in this draft, and that's why everyone's getting intrigued with the depth. Is because if you have those early second rounders, it's going to be some good names still on the board. I think, I know we just talked about a big man with Donovan Clingan, but I think Adem Bona is a name I'd watch out for them. UCLA, really high motor, tough big. I mean, he looks like the Hulk on the court, and he plays tough, and he's really, really talented defensively. So he kind of had a bad year at UCLA because they thought all this incoming freshman talent was going to be their offense, and it was not. So they're like, hey, we need you to be our offensive guy. And he's like, excuse me. So just kind of got put out of place, and he's still very talented defensively. I think he had around a 40-inch vertical at the combine at, around 6'9", 240. So he's a bit of a beast. Enrique Freeman's a name. He's buzzing a lot right now of Akron. He could be at the late first round, but if he's going to be there still, I think a team's going to jump all over him in the second round. A little bit older, but positional versatility, rebounds like crazy. I think he averaged around 18 and 12 last year, and he's apparently just been sensational in workouts. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of, where he ends up. But at 34, you never know. He could be there, and I don't think it would take long for that pick to be turned in if he still was there.
Yeah, I like Freeman because it's like one of those guys I've probably never seen him miss a shot. It's like someone I've only watched highlights of. So what I've seen him, he's good. But like, he's 6'7" and does everything, and like that's an intriguing type of player in the NBA, and like go Zips. They wear cool jerseys too. I think right. Akron has sweet jerseys. So. I guess getting back to those are two names that I Bona is someone I really like. Blazers have 40. I would definitely, if he's there at 40, I think that's a no brainer because he's like, he seems that could be a two-way guy. He's got if you sharpen a little bit of offense to make him a pick and roll threat, like when you watch him play at UCLA, he just flies around. He just plays so hard, runs end to end really hard. Like he's fun. I guess getting back to the Clingan thing and with the Bona and stuff like this, it's like, how much do you, when you're evaluating teams, like, do you worry about needs? Are you a best player guy? Are you a fit guy? Or is there a gray area where you kind of tend to operate?
Yeah. I mean, every Blazers fan's going to be like, another big he's recommending. And it's like, no, guys, I understand their roster. I know Duop's there. I know Robert Williams. I think you get to a point where you're probably best player available if you love them. If you're just like,
Right.
hey, overhead over heels. But I think if you're getting to a point where you got two players neck and neck, you're like, hey, the fit might be a little bit better with this. And maybe they're looking for some wing depth. Problem is they got a lot of young Nate. Like they got Chris
so
Murray,
many wings.
A lot of wings. Rupert, I know they have very high hopes for. I know they're high on him, and there's a lot of other guys waiting. So at one point with a team like this, I think you got to go like, hey, we just need to keep adding assets and get best player available. And I understand that now. Obviously, if they drafted Klingon early, I would be like, no, you don't need to draft Bono later. Let's not get too crazy. So like, there's a lot of other names like Dylan Jones at Weber State. Probably going to be a very familiar name for a lot of Blazers fans, but talented, versatile. Another piece you could get, KJ Simpson of Colorado, where we just talked about Cody. KJ's really talented if you want to get some backcourt depth there. Jamal Shed, another talented Houston guard, undersized, but he's a dog. If you're looking for him like a momentum setting, mindset, like just he'll go to war with anyone. So a lot of really intriguing names. It's just going to be really fascinating with the Blazers, kind of what they prioritize in terms of adding some depth, because they're pretty stacked with some positions on their roster when it comes to either forwards or centers. It's just which way do you want to go?
It's weird, right? Because it's like you think they shouldn't draft a guard because they've spent the last two drafts drafting guards and they have Anthony Simons on the roster. So drafting a guard high in the draft seems a little bit weird. But then you really get into it and it's like, oh, they need wings. Everyone's like, they need wings. And I agree. I think that's totally fair analysis. But then you look at the last draft, it's like, who's playing? Who are the young guys that are playing and contributing? Chris Murray and Jabari Walker. And they tried to get Rupert in there as well. And Tumani Kamara seems like someone who's going to play a ton next year as well. Jeremy Grant's still on the roster. Okay, that's a lot of forwards. Okay, right. So now they need a big. It's like, well, they have DA. DA is going to play 34 minutes a night. That's only 14 minutes, or maybe plays 32, but that's like 16 minutes a night for whoever they draft. It's tricky. I think because of how full the roster is, one, they're just going to make some trades. Like this team is not going to look the same. And two, this is why you just draft the best player available. This is why you just put, this is for this team and their situation, play the board, because you have, it's all question marks. It's all question marks. There's some upside guys. There's some fun, intriguing guys. If you listen to the dudes at No Ceiling, there's a bunch of players that are about to pop and end up, this team's going to be really good. And the rebuild's going to turn the corner. They gotta, I think like for me and particularly reading everything at No Ceilings and all that, it's like, I am heavily more than I've ever been. Maybe for this team, it's like, just play the board, whatever you believe, whenever the Blazers have it. And they say, we got this dude ranked 6th. We're now picking at 14. We're taking him. We just need to make it happen. Tyler, the No Ceilings draft guide is out. Where can people find it?
At our No Ceilings website, which is NoCeilingsNBA.com. The response has been awesome. And we work really hard behind the scenes on that kind of all year round. We plan in the beginning of the season, kind of keep adding to it, and then try to get it out right before the draft for everyone to get. It's a digital copy, so you just get it and it goes right into your inbox. And it's been cool to kind of see the response from it. And this is what we love to do. This is our favorite time of the year. It's like Christmas for us, so it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a No Ceiling subscriber. The in my inbox every morning, like it comes out before I wake up. I wake up pretty early. I got a little kid, but I'm not up at 5:50. I'm not at 5:45. Like I'm sleeping a little later. I know Tyler also has a young child. Tyler probably is up at 5:45.
I don't have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. I'm about a year into the future on you. So I'm making it till at least 6:30. But it's, I'm reading the inbox. I'm often reading it before I get out of bed on my phone. It's like how to get, my sort of draft fix this time of year and then all year long as well. Tyler and the gang do great work. You've heard them all on the podcast in the last 2 weeks. And we're going to try to get more heading into the draft. We'll see how it goes. Tyler, thanks so much for your time. It was a whole bunch of fun.
Thanks for having me on, Mike. I appreciate it.
Dear listeners, come back for tomorrow's show. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. I know I was a little late with an episode this week. Life gets in the way, but we're still doing 5 episodes. So come back and join us. Come back for tomorrow's show. We're going to talk about all things Olympic Trail Blazers. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.